Hello boys, Mordarim here. Today, with a little bit of a different build, I revisited my idea of a Righteous Fire build in this game, and I came up with a Lightning Aura Spellblade that's working quite nicely. So first, a little bit of a gameplay. I tested the damage for bosses in single target on the dummy and went into a map afterwards. So you can see this right now.
Cannot do that.
Okay, so as you can see, I pump out quite a lot of damage at single target, and my clear is also quite nice. So how did I do this one? Very easy. I'll show you first every skill. So the build is based around Fire Aura, so we need to boost our damage somehow. Okay, so our first skill is Manastrike. Manastrike is our single target DPS skill, and it's also buffing our damage. So we are using global damage nodes with rate sap. We strike an enemy and get a global damage increase. This one works for our Fire Aura. And our second one is Rune Sap. Rune Sap increases our global spell damage per enemy hit by 12, and this one stacks. So the more enemies we hit, the more strikes we do, the more this one stacks. So our Lightning Aura is getting a buff of this. Okay, this spell also functions as our main damage source for single target DPS. With Mana Spark, we want our mana to be as full as possible to increase our damage. We are using Mana Storm to cast Lightning. This one is a lightning spell, instant cast and intelligence skill tag. So we are scaling this one with adaptive spell damage. We are scaling this one with lightning damage. We are not scaling this one with damage over time. So we need to split our damage a little bit. Not much, but a little bit to increase our overall damage. Right, we also increase our attack speed with this node, so it's a must-have. This one is also increasing our attack speed. Okay, so our second spell is Firebrand. Firebrand is a little bit special. We are using this skill to trigger this node, Brand of Arcanus. Brand of Arcanus increases our adaptive spell damage by quite a huge amount. We want this skill because of the high attack speed it gains per stack, and we also have this Everflames node, so our stacks refresh. So we get this one with this Wildfire node to 6 stacks, and we can keep this one up. So our Fire Aura damage is always at the maximum. We also convert it with Galvanize with this node, and we get a lot of ward with Pyro Shielding. Wardening Flames increase our ward generation per stack, so we get around 50 ward per second with full stacks. So quite a nice addition to our repertoire. So our third skill is Enchant Weapon. I was playing around with this one a little bit, but I came up with this one. So I need concentration for the active duration increase. We want celerity for 50% increased attack speed. This one will boost our damage quite a lot. So how does this one work? We get more stacks from our Manastrike with each and every hit. We also have a 20% chance on hit to generate a Fire Aura stack, so celerity is increasing our damage by quite a lot. We also buff our melee elemental damage with this one, so Manastrike is dealing quite a lot of damage. Next one is the melee shock chance. This one is passive, so not much to say. Conduit is our main damage source for this skill. With Thundering, we get a sap every few milliseconds, and this one deals quite a lot of damage. It zaps every enemy around us, so this one doesn't have a cap like static does, and it's quite useful. And we'll finish this one up with draw power to increase our lightning melee leech, so we regenerate our health a lot faster and better than we would otherwise. Thundering is a possible increase to damage. We could take this one, but we are not scaling our melee lightning damage, we are scaling our aura damage. That's the shtick of this build, so I didn't pick this one. Okay, so Flame Ward is our defensive and simultaneously a very offensive skill for us. We pick the barrier node, less hit damage. So this one stacks with the inert 25% less damage taken from Flame Wards, less as you can see. No, it's even 30% less damage taken, so we get 70% less damage taken for the whole duration. We have 3 seconds base duration. With this one we have 4 seconds base duration, and that's quite a lot. We also get 400 ward. We regenerate a little bit of ward with each second, and we also decrease our elemental damage taken. So this one also stacks with the barrier node and the inert less damage taken. Then we take lightning ward to convert our fire aura to lightning. This one converts it globally, but for this node we needed it anyway. So we take infusion for a 200% fire damage buff that converted to lightning. So that's a very strong offensive cooldown. We take fire aura to generate additional fire aura stacks with this skill. And we take Eye of Flame. This one increases our fire aura damage, so our lightning aura damage, by 15% multiplicatively over all other multipliers on a whole passive tree and gear tree. So this one is extremely strong and one of the best nodes we can take. So Flame Ward is mandatory as a defensive and offensive cooldown and passive offensive damage increase. Okay, our last skill is Teleport for our mobility and for buffs. Crystalline Passage increases our cold resistance. We can put more health on our gear, so we don't need this much elemental resistance. We could take Resonance Plasma, but this one is, I don't think, quite worth it. We get Flickering for the mana efficiency, but that's completely... I think I can take this one out. Wormhole is for the global cooldown recovery speed, so we have a lot more uptime on our Flame Ward and on our enchant weapon. But you can take out those points and put them into Resonant Plasma to gain more health, more resistances and stun avoidance, so this one is quite nice. You could also pick Elemental Dusk, Elemental Dawn and Elemental Midnight to increase your teleport damage. This will clear out most of the smaller enemies and works quite nicely with this build, so you can vary this one a little bit. Elemental Affinity increases our elemental damage overall, so this one is also quite nice. That's 4 seconds. With Dilation we get it to around 4.8, I think, 4.8 seconds. So we have 100% uptime with our teleport on this buff, as well as this buff, as well as this buff, so, and this buff. So very, very strong overall. So next up, our passive tree. We picked Elementalist, we picked Arcane Current for increased Arcane Lightnings. That's, I think, 5 lightning casts. This increases our arrow clear quite a lot, so very nice. Next we picked Mage Flurry. Mage Flurry is quite nice for our build. 15% attack speed is not too shabby. We could take Scholar instead of every other skill here to increase our tankiness, because 80 life is quite a lot. We don't need the mana, so I opted for the damage. We are currently taking Sun and Storms for the 7% per point lightning damage increase. We could take those points out and put them somewhere else, but I opted for the increased damage next. We also have a little bit of a Arcanist for the fire resistance and lightning resistance, as well as a little bit of intelligence, since we are still scaling with intelligence and our ward retention is helping us survive. So as for Spellblade, we picked Elemental Affinity, and we also picked Flamewalker, we picked Incinerating Aura, Crackling Aura to convert everything to lightning. We increased our global lightning damage with this one. We took Mana Reaver, don't really need this one, but it's still there for a little bit of mana gain and health. We need 3 points into this to gain Inferno, our main generating of Fire Aura. It's 20% Fire Aura chance on every hit we deal, so more attack speed is always better. With every stack we also increase our ward generation with Flame Drinker and our melee elemental damage per fire aura stack. So we don't really need this one, but it buffs our manastrike quite a lot, so it's always nice to have additional scaling. So we picked Spellblade for the additional spark charge chance on lightning melee attacks with our beloved manastrike and with our firebrand that's converted to lightning and melee. We picked Gemini for dual wielding. We also picked arcane shielding for defensive for 10% less damage taken and a little bit of ward generation. And Shattered Aegis is for increased damage mitigation. It decreases the effect of arcane shielding, but at 4 stacks we still get a net gain to around, I think it was 4% per point, so 4 times 4. So we get a 16 less damage taken arcane shield on us. We picked Arcane Warden for 45 ward gain on hit with melee attacks, so we attack very fast to generate a lot of ward. We also picked Ascent Duel for melee attack speed and ward gain on hit. This one synergizes very well with our build. And we picked Infused Weapon for that massive melee lightning damage. But we could take out those points and put them into this point, because a shock effect of melee attacks is quite nice. We generate a lot of shock effects, and the shock effect increases our lightning aura damage by decreasing the resistance that the enemy has. So the more shock effect we have, the less lightning resistance the enemy has. We can stack up shock to 20 stacks, so we can decrease the lightning resistance of enemies by quite a lot. Okay, next up, my current gear. My current gear is pretty busted. I am sitting at a lot of resistance. I'm still lacking a little bit of poison and necrotic resistance since I don't have any blessings, but that's completely fine, right? We do not have much health, but we generate so much ward that we usually don't really need much health. So we are using the Wing Guards unique. We don't care about crit, so the melee attack speed is very nice to have. Also, you gain haste on hits for 1 second. It increases our cast speed, movement speed, and attack speed even further, which is quite nice for the build. Stormtide are probably the best boots in the game. I think they're completely busted. They increase our shock effect. They gain to chance to shock on lightning hits is very nice. We gain 30% increased movement speed and inert 4% to 7%, I think. Yeah, 7% movement speed on the implicit. Those boots are completely busted. I think they're completely overpowered and need to get nerfed or get some kind of drawback, because the shock you get is just, I think, 2%. Yeah, 2% lightning resistance decreased. So practically nothing. Then our mage relic, there is only one viable one, the increased elemental damage over time one. You get this one with lightning damage, increased elemental damage over time. Damage leached as health. Why is that? Well, we lack a little bit of health regeneration, so this one helps quite a lot. And fix our resistances. For the ring, we got the Invoker Static Touch. So this one is probably not the best choice, but 13 spell lightning damage is quite a lot. When we look at our flame aura, we see that it's a damage over time spell. So added spell damage applies to fire aura at 140% effectiveness per second. So if fire aura stacks for, I think, 5 seconds, you get not 13 adaptive spell damage or 13 lightning spell damage, you get around 15, 16 per second. So it's a very strong multiplier to damage. And additionally, you get stacks of flame aura. So it's not just one stack and that's it, because the damage is quite low then, but you get stacks. You can get to like 15 stacks with this build right now. You can get even more with better gear. For our main hand, we use a dagger, the runic dagger. This one has quite a lot of attack speed. We want the adaptive spell damage on this dagger. The melee physical damage and the crit chance is not so important, but the attack speed and the adaptive spell damage is quite nice. You can roll very high attack speed modifiers on this one. We have a tier 6 increased attack speed mod on this, compared to a tier 5 that's like double the attack speed. no, it's 50% more attack speed. That's quite fast, so really nice. You can get lightning damage on this one as a substat. Why lightning damage, not damage over time? Well, you could get elemental damage over time, but this one is not available on daggers, swords and so on. It's only available on wands and staffs. At least I didn't find it in the talent planner. So I opted for the lightning damage to increase our lightning damage with procs and with manastrike as well as firebrand. Okay, for our chest, we get the adaptive spell damage chest because, well, as you can see with the fire stacking buff here, that's a tier 5 roll at middle of the pack roll. So we get 176% increased fire damage and the adaptive spell damage, quite nice. I opted for a flame ward charge, so we have 2 flame ward charges. This will generate more damage, it will generate additional survivability. It's very nice, and especially with the decreased cooldown. As for our amulet, you can go with increased attack speed, you can go with increased resistances to necrotic or physical with one base and elemental resistances with the other. Those are arguably better, but this one has a tier 6 lightning penetration mod, and I wanted to use this one because that amulet is nasty, man. For a ring, I used this one to generate more resistances because I was lacking those. I could use another Invoker's Touch, Static Touch, but I don't have the resistance for this one right now. So this one is a net damage gain for this build, but I opted for the ring, the shimmering gold ring of hope, for the elemental resistance, void resistance, and necrotic resistance. And that elemental damage roll is also not bad. I mean, it's on the low end, but what can I do? Structured. As for a helmet, this one is pretty crap. I don't have any fire aura on this one, fire aura damage, increased one. You can roll the same as with the chest, but I didn't have the luck to get one. And I really wanted that increased cooldown recovery speed for cooldowns, like Flame Ward, Teleport, Enchant Weapon. As for the idols, you pick increased fire aura damage on this one. You have a little bit of cast fire aura on kill with a fire skill. I sadly don't have a fire skill, so this is pretty much useless, but the spell lightning damage is still increasing our damage for fire aura, so that's the best idol I had. So those two are pretty much useless. I need to exchange those. I could use, for example, humble idols or other idols to increase my poison or necrotic resistance, my cold resistance, whatever, my health, to increase my tankiness, because I'm lacking a little bit for that one-shot factor. So you can get one-shot with this build. You don't have immediately 2000 health, but yeah, it's still a nice build. Okay, one more thing. I have a loot filter for this one. Quick rundown. I already made a video about this one. I will link it also in the description box. You can find it there or on my channel. It's a very short video. It's just 4 minutes explaining how this loot filter works and what to expect with this one, how to install it and where to find it. But you can find it in the description box, like I said. So every item slot has 3 slots. 1 for leveling and shard farming, 1 for the suffixes, 1 for the prefixes. You can set this one up very easily by just selecting the subtypes for the helmet or so on. Get the affixes you want and just tell him, for example, you want the strictness to be every item with a tier 3 mod of the selected affixes is gonna show up with the color that you selected on the left side. So I don't want that one. I want this one to show every item with this mod. For the suffixes, it's the same, and so on and so forth. And you can activate each rule with a checkmark box. You just need to check it or uncheck it. Okay, so if you liked the video, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitch. I really appreciate every one of you, and I hope you like the build. I hope you like Righteous Fire as much as I do. And I hope to see you next time. Bye!